We are live. So someone check the YouTube. Does anyone know what we're doing?
I'm playing the music. You should hear that. I've got my music set up, so it's coming through my mic. That's usually where I fade it out.
Good.
An eternal shout out to Neil Thompson for that banging beat.
What's probably useful, because we're doing something new for the first time, is to test it.
Oh, I like testing things.
What should we? So I want to check. Let's see what's going on. This is strange.
Digital Twin Fan Club.
Oh, we are live. Yeah, it's live. It's working. This is strange.
Yeah, and it opens with "This is strange." So we are live. I probably shouldn't watch that while I'm listening to it. That seems very self-referential.
Just watch ourselves. We've got two watchers.
What are they saying, those guys? Like, dude, is you? You're watching
something about air fryers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can do something a bit more of import
air fryers
today.
We were going to podcast on your LinkedIn post, weren't we? I mean, it's been a while. Did we have a summer break? We had a summer break, didn't we? Basically,
yeah. We didn't tell anyone. We just did it. Classic.
It just accidentally happened.
So
welcome to the new season of Digital Twin Fan Club Diaries.
Season X plus 1. There we go. It's got a name now. Season X plus 1. How
old is it now?
Don't ask me. All I know is it's today. I'm 43. I don't know how that happened.
It's 5 years old.
Wow, that's crazy. So yeah, you were. I logged into LinkedIn today because I was doing some report stuff yesterday, and I had to get something off my chest because it couldn't go in the report, but it felt really important.
Oh, is that why you did it?
Yeah, because it had no place. It has no place in the report, but it was really important, so I just did it, and it felt like procrastination, but I kind of needed to do it, so I gave myself a free pass. And maybe this is how I'm going to do social media, because I really struggle with social media. I always feel like it's people saying stuff for the sake of it.
Oh yeah. I mean,
we've got something to say it.
The thing I like the dislike I like about LinkedIn is everyone posts globally and platform wise generally like how amazing everything is, and everything's amazing, the project is amazing, I'm amazing, my new job's amazing, and it's not very. I actually did a poll, didn't I, on ages ago about authenticity on LinkedIn. Would people like to see more authenticity? Your post was really authentic, and the result of that has been that it's had quite a bit of traction because it was true Henry. It wasn't Henry launching a white paper and putting himself on a pedestal.
Exactly. Yeah, if you're like, this is super important and I'm super special, you should believe in me, then yeah, I think that certainly has a place, and people do like that sort of stuff. But I was just something I needed to say, and it's like, oh, maybe that is how I should approach social media. Say something when you have something to say that is important, that you care about.
So, talk us through what you said. What did you say? What was the context? What was it about? What's the engagement been like? You probably can share your screen. Can you share your screen? Yeah, you can.
You sound surprised.
Because we're live.
Yeah, my frame rate is shocking. I'm trying to work out why that is. It's probably because
because it'll be bandwidth throttling it up your new hyper fast internet.
Anyway, technical issues aside, I think it's because I've got a new graphics card, but my computer is still really old. Oh, got all big there. Right, so yes. So what did I post? So I really wanted to put into my report about the importance of upskilling construction, specifically trades, that suicide is a big issue, and that diversity is a big issue related to that. I'm quite pink. You're having fun with buttons there. And I've had to focus it because it's important, but it's kind of it's not directly related to why apprenticeships aren't being taken up by small businesses, but it is a factor because, as you can see in the graph on my LinkedIn post from 2 days ago now, wow, time flies, the rate of suicide per 100,000 people is at its lowest in construction. These are specific construction statistics. I think I can link the original research paper. I think it's from Caledonian University. The rate for suicide of management professionals is it is increasing, but it's been bobbing around the 6 to 11 per 100,000 mark, and the rate of suicide for unskilled site labor has been 3 to 4 times that, from 48 per 100,000 up to 85. And it's there is a big problem. We did so much in construction about health and safety when falls were killing lots of people, and falls do still kill too many people, and there are lots of problems around that. But now 504 suicides last year in construction, it completely dwarfs the number of deaths by
so that statistic is that so it's a terrible statistic, and it's not something I've ever really thought about, to be honest. Head in the sand and all that. Is that from someone who is listed as a construction professional then, basically? So anyone from like trade, demolition, designer, engineer, CEO?
Well, yeah. So one of the interesting or annoying things I found during the research that I've been doing is that architects aren't under the same class as construction.
Yeah.
And certain engineering professions aren't either, because these are standard operational codes, SOCs, I can't remember what they stand for, that is used for all UK government statistics. So anything that is in the specific construction ones, but there are notable exceptions that you would consider to be in construction. So that's kind of what it comes from. So I wasn't really thinking about it either, I'll be perfectly honest. I did go to a dinner, I believe the Construction Computing Awards several years ago, and they were supporting a mental health for construction charity, and that's when it first came to my attention. But it wasn't until I was hosting the main stage at Digital Construction Week, and so that meant that I got to watch lots of talks as well as introduce them and speak to them afterwards. And one of the ones that really stuck with me was Fred Mills of B1M is championing the Get Construction Talking initiative, which is supported by Procore. So this is an international issue. I was looking at UK stats, but I do believe that the stats stand up internationally. And yeah, when he was the one who said that 504, and I think he compared that to the deaths by accident in the UK, which was certainly under 50. I think it might be 29. I have to be careful. I am speaking to a healthcare professional, and if you say commit suicide, that's part of the stigma. And sometimes I ignore people and their language, right? When they're like, oh, you can't say a certain word anymore because it's offensive. Well, people just find new ways to be offensive. It's surely about.
So why can't you say commit?
If you commit suicide, that is like the illegal act of killing yourself. Suicide was illegal. It might still be illegal.
I think it is.
Suicide is like saying they committed a crime, and that's
right. Okay.
So
yeah, okay.
I respect that because I can see the point, and it's something unconscious that I was doing because that's what people have always said to me. So people take their own lives, or similar. Anyway, it's very sad. And so I was doing this research, and I just needed to get it off my chest because I do feel like certainly people who work on sites in construction in the UK especially, but I believe this applies in all sorts of places, have really bad conditions. So they are paid poorly, as in they might have contract terms that basically say we'll pay you when we feel like it, if at all.
Yeah.
Which is a huge issue, right?
Yeah, I think we've both been victims of that, haven't we? I mean, we've talked about it. One of the toughest times I went through, probably financially more than anything, was when I was an undergrad. I was postgrad working for myself, and basically did a piece. I was working. I had my own company, and I was doing like consultancy, and didn't get paid for 18 months.
Wow.
After doing like a full-time job for somebody for like 8 months, and they paid me at. I did the design competition, and I got paid when they finished on site. it was
Wow.
a little bit silly, but it was during the 2008 financial crash. I was just being used to manage cash flow for them, basically.
Yeah.
But it absolutely trashed my life for a year because I had no money. I had no money coming in. I spent ages trying to chase them, and they just ignored me. And they got the run around. I learned a valuable lesson then, but it was horrible. And
Yeah.
something that
But
still
that's the
sticks
sort
with
of
me.
thing that can, like, you know, if it takes you to the edge, if you've got a family or if you've got a mortgage, or even if not, you know, it's extremely stressful not knowing if you can afford to eat. That is that is brutal. So that was certainly one of my points.
Yeah.
We'll go through. I've got the kind of 4 key challenges that I've come up with. Well, and from speaking with experts, and we can go through the comments. High insolvency rates. So I was challenged on this because, you know, there is a view that a lot of people set up a business for a project and then close it. There's like some sort of, I don't know if it's tax dodge or if it's
SPVs, isn't it?
liability.
So special something venture where they base it. It's to limit their liability. So a lot of developers do that. So developer 1 will set up business development bicycle 1 for one project, development bicycle 2 for another project, just literally to manage their risk, because they can just liquidate the business, can't they?
Yeah.
So
Which
that does happen, but that's like not that many, really.
Well, so
Or is it? Am I making that up?
Well, construction has significantly more in the UK, has significantly more business closures than any other sector. So you could say that that's what people are doing, even small businesses, they're doing that. But the number of insolvencies, which is people bust, is also like 4 or 5 times higher than the average in construction as well. So people are, and these are generally, I've been looking for micro businesses. They are generally the smallest businesses that are doing that. So the big businesses go bust every few years. You know, there was a big Carillion falling over, and, you know, there's questions, you know, certain, is it, who is the company that has kind of pulled out of the UK?
Lend-Lease.
You know, Lend-Lease, right? And they're not closed, you know, but they've had to limit their.
It's Europe, UK, and America. Like, it's big. It's a big shift for them. That, but it's interestingly, I work with Lend-Lease on some projects down south, and we kind of got involved at the start of their kind of disruption, so to speak, and you could see the stress it was putting people under.
I'm sure.
Because it was like, oh, you're starting this project. Oh, by the way, half the team's getting canned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I've been working on a bid with somebody, and their the Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Research Catapult is being closed, and it's really, you know, you could see that it was hurting him. You know, it's difficult. So that sort of uncertainty, if it's your business or if you work for somebody else, that is a huge issue. Cost, which leads into cost of living. If you aren't making a packet, then you know, my mortgage went up by £500 a month, and that's happened to loads of people, from something that was quite affordable to something that's actually quite difficult. You know, that's quite
same
difficult.
with energy. I mean, you look at you look at the UK from 2019. This is quite a common thread, particularly for. I know this causes a lot of contention, but the middle class, the middle, like the lower middle class,
the squeeze middle, they call it.
The squeeze middle, like, because
everyone's like, oh, boo-hoo, you can't afford your mortgage on your big property, but it's just as stressful. It is just as stressful. I think that's the, you know, the cost of living is hurting all sorts of people. You know, I think, interestingly, that also applies to, I've met in my life a few very rich people, and they're actually sometimes quite broke in a weird way. They'll live in this massive property, but what you don't realize is it costs them, you know, £50,000 to £100,000 a year to maintain that property. And so that's why they drive around in a 40-year-old Land Rover, because they can't afford a new one. But they, you know, if they die, then they're, you know, they'll leave a lot of assets. But you know, they can, you know, all sorts of people can be cash poor, and that's the stress, right? You couldn't just sell your house tomorrow to pay your food bill. You know, you'd have to put it on the market, and then what? You know. So yeah, I do feel sympathy for it. It applies across society for sure. The next one, unfair contracts.
Unlimited liability. Okay.
Yeah.
That's always the one that appears in the contract.
Was it Paul Stevens?
What elements of contracts? Because the bits I always see are poor payment terms, unlimited liability, basically shafting the smaller people down the chain, generally by the bigger people that've got 57 lawyers that can kind of be like, well, you're either going to work with us or you're not, and here's the terms. Thanks, see you later.
Yeah, so there's been a trend in construction, and I interviewed a very interesting professor of estate management who used to be in like a professional. It's not Paul Stevens. Can't remember his name. I will find it. And he has a date and a time of when this started. Was basically apparently all of the leading construction firms were brought into a room by the Prime Minister of the time, Margaret Thatcher, and they had been used to a system where it was acknowledged that you needed to support the construction sector by the government. So they would procure things. They would be like, all right, okay, right, we'll do a new housing estate and you guys can build it. There we go. We'll do some new roads. Like, there you go. And it was like the government would fill the gap of the private, demand for construction. And she basically went, nah, we're not doing that anymore. And I can understand why you would not want to just artificially prop up a sector. It doesn't seem to make sense. But as a result of that, they all, from that moment forward, realized they needed to start reducing their liability. So that's why over the years they have morphed. Very many tier one contractors, the leading construction firms, have morphed into contract management and project management companies.
And everything's done by the tier two subbies, isn't it? Just about, or a collection of subcontractors.
Tier 3 or tier 4, right? It goes. Tier 4 is the lowest I found. So in terms of if you're trying to get people to do stuff, so if you wanted people to say, like I was looking at, take on apprenticeships, but it applies equally well to the point that somebody made in my comments thread, which is Gary Young, who he worked with Southern Regional College.
You did, yeah. I saw his comment on your post, actually.
So he was saying that, this is something that you should drive through public contracts with social clauses as part of a quality assessment. And I think that's valid. The Social Value Act in the UK 2012 has been used to drive all sorts of things, because basically we're not going to pay you any extra to do this stuff, but we have these government priorities and we want you to do them. So it could be apprenticeships, but it could also be mental health, and they could drive mental health support through that. So I could see how that would work. But yeah, ultimately, the sort of change in the structure, and I don't blame any one individual. I think they've these large organizations are looking to reduce their risk, so the way to do that was to not be liable for the quality of work. So the way they did that was they delegated that down. But now it's been delegated so far down that the people who are doing the work are really stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And I think that's become what interestingly, the Building Safety Act and M&E subcontractors, I feel very sorry for them in that space, because they're having a huge amount of risk passed to them. So all they do is they add 20% to the cost of doing stuff, because they're like, all this risk, but then they don't win work. So I think the next couple of years are going to be quite interesting for them in the way the major players procure like services on big projects, because they just want to pass the risk to the lowest common denominator.
But yeah, exactly. But it's if there's some sort of overarching control of a construction project, then is that the right thing? If these things are going to, if the sort of problems that caused Grenfell, as in the wrong product being installed in the wrong way, which if you Sue Butcher's done a lot of work on this, and she's shown me some of the reports, and you see some of the they've taken off the walls from the sides that weren't burnt, and you can see that basically stuff was just jammed in and it wasn't done properly. And so who's at fault?
Construction projects.
Who's at fault? And this,
Yeah,
but there's a key issue here as well. I think from mental health is one thing, but also for betterment of the industry, because there is a huge disconnect between what happens on site and literally everything else, and they aren't included in the conversation. Construction tradespeople from micro businesses, who I'm focusing on because they make up 79% of the industry, according to official estimates, with 379,000 businesses. I'm so on the numbers because it's all in my head right now. Check me out. I've got some more numbers. I've got one more.
Fire it out.
There might, according to research into the shadow economy, there could be up to 1 million businesses in construction, micro businesses
in the UK.
Over double of
in the UK.
In the UK.
Jesus Christ.
That's like one. Could be a one person outfit, 2 or 3. But I think that shows you the scale of the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's what you just mentioned then about the scale of the individuals on site. No matter, it's something I've always pressed. That it always comes down to the lowest common denominator, which is basically a guy on site or a girl on site or anyone on site with a printout or a PDF. Basically.
And who's under this sort of pressure, cost of living.
And this,
and if they're when they're going to get paid.
Or whether they're going to get. It's such an interesting concept, and everyone's got like mental health within their kind of repertoire of who they are as an individual. And everyone, the interesting thing is everyone thinks the people that are in senior positions that are doing really well have got it really easy, and that isn't necessarily the case. And I think that's an important point to make. It isn't just about the people that are on the low wages and the low roles. It's
I think that's fair. That is fair. Yeah, it is, and I think it's a problem for all of us. It's a bit like diversity, which I'll swing into now. Is like diversity isn't an issue for women and non-binary people and BAME people, and people from ethnic minorities, people from religious minorities, people from the LGBTQ plus etc. community. It's not for them, it's for all of us. It's for all of us. Even if you are affected, everyone is affected somehow by the situation that we are in. And mental health is something that affects everybody, as you say, and that's something we can all be a part of the solution. So that neatly brings me on to my fourth point, which nobody picked up on, is lack of diversity. So I have found research that conclusively, in my mind, proves the connection between gender diversity, sex diversity, to be up on my gender politics, having more. This is because this is how the research was done, and it was done, I believe, in Sweden. But those sectors that have greater sex and gender diversity have lower suicide rates, and you can see if that diversity changes over time, the suicide rate goes down. As in industries that are dominated by men, people take their own lives more.
So what do you think the driving factors are for that? Because that's an odd statistic, and I'm sure there's reasoning for it. But it's quite when you just take that at face value, diversity equals less suicide, less. What is that? Because I don't know.
Well, one of the things, because it was a very academic paper, they didn't really make too much conjecture as to why.
They just said it is. They just
like, here's the data. Here's the data from across all of these sectors, from all around the world.
Okay, so let's think about it. You've got a male-dominated sector that's just a bunch of blokes doing stuff. Everyone's stressed. Everyone's putting pressure on each other. Communication's poor. Blokes are terrible at communicating. You then got a sector that is is very mixed. You've got lots of different types of individuals, lots of different personalities.
Because I think sex diversity, gender diversity can be another way. It is a way of getting more diversity of thought. In
that's
general.
The thing. So what you're probably getting is you've got someone who you've then got the typical bloke that's stressed out, but then you've got other people as well that then support each other more. Probably that's the only thing that can jump out of my head. You've got
I was writing this. I was explaining this article to somebody in a Focus Mate session, which is that basically body doubling. You sit on a Zoom call, virtual meeting together, and I was telling her like, well, actually, in that session, I wrote this article instead, and it was interesting. She'd actually been on site herself, and I'm conflating two conversations. Never mind. So I was speaking to somebody, and she had been on site in a construction role, and got lots of patronizing things like, "Do you want me to hold your clipboard for you, love?" You know, that sort of stuff. But also, men would treat her like a daughter or a wife. See, wife or sister. But you know, men would come out of nowhere and confide in her that she barely knew. So this kind of the role of women, for right or wrong, is seen by a lot of men as the person who can heal, who I will talk to about how I feel and will make me feel better. Maybe just talking about it is enough. And I think that is something about there's a male culture around the world can often be like that. You know, we don't talk to each other about how we feel. You know, how are you? I'm fine. You know, I'm sure lots of men around the world have loads of people they consider to be good mates. I don't know their last name. Don't know if they're married. Don't know what they do. You know, we're just mates. You know, we just go out and we hang out and we do the thing, or we work together and we just work together. And if we have an argument, we have an argument, and that's it. You know, this is extremely like, you know, usually I'm the one who's like, no, it's fine. This is dangerous ground because this is all sorts of, we're mixing up all sorts of gender roles and all that sort of stuff. But I do think a lack of diversity, it applies across all sorts of different diversities. So I did interview some, they were women who had come from degree-based jobs and had retrained into carpentry and joinery and cabinet making. And yeah, they were like, yeah, this stuff is rife and it can be really toxic how people talk to each other. And it's not okay. And
so just what was rife within that?
The sort of toxic behavior, people just being really abusive and not having any sort of
within generic corporate environments, or is this
within on construction sites?
We know how horrible and how painful and sickly industries can be, because we had a spell of that when we were working at a business, didn't we, where it was just like it just was not nice because of the culture and the way we were treated.
Yeah. And that isn't based on gender, you know.
No,
anyone can be a bastard.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that's the overview of the points. I'm kind of glad to get that off my chest. Should we go through? I'll go through some of the comments.
I've got the post up. Friday podcast. Who said that?
That was you, mate. Got a like from Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Daniel Block. I believe you're listening. So someone said, learn about and try to apply compassionate leadership as suggested by the King's Fund in healthcare. I posted a link in reply to that. Thought it was really interesting. A really popular one was from Brian Boyd, who's the head of employee relations at NG Bailey Limited. And Brian says, the industry requires serious introspection. Most projects don't have adequate facilities for privacy. Dedicated meeting spaces for contractors to speak with workers are at a premium across the majority of UK sites. Apprehensions prevail about requesting time for sincere employee engagement. It's not good enough to talk the talk. Change means visible change. I thought that's really interesting. Give him a little line.
That's valid, because the idea, you think about if you work in the EC environment that we do, you've got space you have meeting spaces where you can go and have a chat with someone in private. You've got team sessions where you're at home, whereas they are literally building stuff in the blood and guts of building the planet and building the countries, where they probably can't go, can I go and have a chat with you? Because that's a really valid point, I think, actually.
Yeah. We've got another one.
The lack of...
Should we go? Oh, okay.
Go.
Andrew Eldred, who's the who I interviewed for this research I was doing, actually, he's the Chief Operating Officer ECA, which is the Electrical Contractors Association. So it's one of the few trade bodies that have been around a while that do work for smaller businesses and site-based workers. Although electrical contractors are kind of a set apart, they do all sorts of other stuff as well, not just construction. So he says, constructing better health was a flawed but well-intentioned initiative which failed and was never replaced. Rather than repeating
what was that?
You start Googling it, I'll read the rest of the thing. Rather than repeating this over-ambitious and over-centralized approach, client/main contractors can and should mandate a minimum occupational health standard, including mental health. Then leave it to their supply chain to demonstrate compliance, covering all workers, i.e. both directly and indirectly employed. A market will develop to service these requirements. Organizations like his and the Electrotechnical Joint Industry Board are well placed to advise on what such a standard might look like. So there you go. Andrew was actually, I believe he was the director in charge of social value for Crossrail, that later became the Elizabeth line. And that's how I kind of came across him, because that came through just as social value in the UK became mandated as part of a government requirement, and they didn't like the measures that were in place to achieve social value, so they had to do quite a lot of work and learn a lot of lessons to try. Social value is such a broad. You just say social value, like what does that mean?
Yeah,
it's such a broad concept, and it needs to be measurable. So when you start measuring stuff, that leaves room for people to do the minimum. Pass off simple things as complex good things, and it's very difficult to assess.
I mean, one of the one of the things I'll tell you about construction better health in a second, because I've Googled it and I've learned all about it. So something that WSP does, which I think is actually quite good, is it gives, I think 3 times a year, it gives all its staff its ability to anonymously review the business, their team, their work, their manager, across a spectrum of stuff. But a lot of it is focused on how you're feeling and how you're enjoying your job, and whether you're comfortable, whether you're under too much stress, too much pressure. And it's anonymized, but you can say stuff and you can comment. And I think it's actually a really interesting way you can see the variation across teams, and you can see the variation across sectors. Like, you can cut the whole business up from a mental health perspective, and how engaged they are, how much the staff are enjoying work. And I bet a lot of tradies, a lot of guys on site don't have the ability to do that kind of stuff. Because again, it's like, when would they do that? Because they're on site building stuff and they've got deadlines.
Yeah.
Whereas, or we get the opportunity to do that, and it's actually quite a powerful tool, and it becomes like a bit of a game for the senior management to who can get the best score. And right, I've gone down here. How do I improve that? So that's just looking at the Construction Better Health pilot. It was basically a pilot was launched called Construction Better Health to test out a model delivery within industry, taking forward the HSE's recommendations for the provision of occupational health support on site. And it was canned in 2020, basically.
So, I found an article from Construction Inquirer on that. So it was purchased, that whatever constructing better health occupational health scheme, it was purchased by B&CE, I don't know who they are, in 2016, and their CEO at the time said, "We supported the acquisition of it on behalf of the industry, planning to replace it with a new integrated system that fulfilled the needs of the construction and occupational health industries. As the build progressed, it became increasingly complex and costly to deliver and is not commercially viable at this time." So there was no...
It was too much money, wasn't making enough money. Yeah. It wasn't capitalist enough.
Well, if you want to make, this is such a tension that drives, like, I feel like construction in the UK is like one of the most right-wing sectors, and I don't mean that from like people's individual like political stances. I mean, like, if everybody is a subcontractor and running their own business, then how do they get representation, like say from a union, or how do they get general help? And if you're going to get supported by government, it actually ends up getting delivered through a business. So it ends up basically being philanthropy, right? Fundamentally, it's does this business that was given the money to deliver this massive program spend that money well or badly?
So are you talking about like the idea? So take for the idea of absolute micro SMEs. Again, I come from a big company. It's got a lot of support and backup for you as an individual, which obviously comes with its negatives as well. But you're a 2-man band. You're doing everything.
Yeah.
And there's no support there. I think Xero is a good example of that, because the pressure that Xero gets put under for delivery and everything around it, there's no support there. You've just got to do it, and like you have to make it happen. And if you scale Xero into a big business, and there was 5 or 6 of us doing it, like there's no occupational health, there's no sick leave, there's no. So there'd be a lot of micro SMEs in the construction industry that are in that space, where it's just a couple of guys and a few subcontractors that are getting flogged to an inch of their life.
And that applies to, there are loads of architecture firms like that, engineering firms like that. This is, I've been looking at on-site stuff, but that applies to all sorts, like all the micro SMEs. Everyone's in the same boat. It is a problem. It is a problem. I think I've got one more good one. Oh, you're showing me.
No. Then I was going to say, what do we need to do to improve it?
So Anne Okafor, who is a member of the Construction Industry Council 2050 group, I have an announcement to make about that. I'll do that later today. I'll do it right now. So I've been nominated, elected as chair of the Construction Industry Council 2050 group.
Nice.
Which is cool. Thank you very much. And
Construction Industry Council 2050
Industry Council. Yeah.
Nice.
So that represents, I believe, last time I looked, 32 professional institutions and trade bodies in construction. And Anne Okafor, who is one of our representations from the Chartered Institute of Building, the CIOB, says in the comments to my post, check out Finwell Training Limited, empowering healthy relationships with money. And she was talking to me about this. They educate and empower people to take care of their financial well-being. Everybody can find something useful from their work. And then she goes on to say, there are huge links between mental health and financial well-being. So I would suggest this is a conversation that can help find solutions for some people. So there you go.
Congratulations on your new role, Henry. We should maybe podcast that one at some point. But
thank you.
Let's talk about what needs to change and what you think, because obviously, like, it's easy to go, everything's crap, everything's terrible.
I think if you're asking,
the Get Talk initiative is obviously a good starting point. People
I think literally, that's a really good point, because I love to get complicated. I go straight into like right policy details.
Let's get complicated.
Have a chat. But no, you're right. I'm just going to echo. This is what Fred Mills said on stage at Digital Construction Week: is talk to somebody, talk to a friend, talk to somebody you work with. Open that line of communication. That is a great start, and that is something simple that we could all do. So that's an easy.
Fair, we do that with each other, don't we? Like occasionally, I text you and I say, "This is." I was going to swear then. We can't swear live. I said, "That's bad. This is bad. I hate that person. This is doing my head in. Thanks, bye." And that's it.
Yeah.
And then he'll say, "Oh, okay."
I usually go with Scooby Doo Ruh-roh. I need to stop saying Ruh-roh as my response to everything. So there is something really simple that could be done, which is like we just talk.
Well, for example, the 2 days ago, something happened. So I highlighted something in my job, and then it was just a general observation that I made of something that I really wasn't involved with, that was a big issue, and I became the bad guy. I was like, nothing to do with me. Anyway, I just said, "Oh, this has happened," and you were like, "You said ruh-roh."
Yeah, I did say ruh-roh to that, but that comes from a place of where we've both been through that same situation. We're just going to be super vague about this, but we've been through that situation together before. So for it to come up like adjacent to you and you to get involved, it's like,
So it's a bit of a PTSD moment in a lot of ways, but from previous life. But I just thought it was funny that it wasn't nothing to do with me. I was like, "Oh, have you thought about this?" Pointing at a thing that doesn't exist, and then just got. But to contextualize that, I just messaged you and mourned, and then you just sent me a Scooby Doo picture back. I felt better.
I do my best.
But anyway. So talking. What else? Let's get complex.
Right. If we're going to get complex, I think one of the things that I believe is that I think you were just saying this about companies don't have time to do this. People who are running their own small business don't have time to it. Is it people need to be, if you are asking people to do anything extra, even if it's for their own benefit, you actually have to pay for that yourself.
Yeah.
So, half an hour a week, a month, an hour a month, whatever it is, whatever sort of time you're thinking about, if you're going to develop a mental well-being strategy for your directly and, as Andrew Eldred said, your indirectly employed people, you need to cover that cost. Because if you run a small business and somebody says, I've got this great offer for you, it's completely free, and you're like, right, are you going to pay for that? Like, no. Okay, well, I can't do it then because I need to be earning money to keep my business afloat right now. I would love to do that, but I can't afford it. Is going to be a huge problem for people. So I think it needs to be costed and it needs to be paid for, regardless of who's getting support. If we're going to be providing some level of support, in whatever format it takes. So it has to be paid for, and it can't be paid for by the most vulnerable people. Fundamentally, this is it's one of the tragedies of mental health, isn't it? Is that, like, if you're depressed, it's a self-fulfilling cycle. You stop going. I stop going outside. I stop contacting people. I stop exercising. I start drinking. I start eating more, and I feel worse. And it's like, it's that you often lack the tools, and people still can have agency, and you can get yourself out of any slump. But people need support, and you need to provide that, or it's not going to be as effective. So yeah, paying for it, making that time.
How do they make it? How do they do that though? Because,
well, I mean, we go with
is it
Andrew's.
forced? Is it policy? Is it just is it a cultural well, like, take a really curveball example of where people do change businesses to 4 days a week and see productivity increases, or there's that bank in America where everyone ended up on 70 grand a year and he took a pay cut and everyone ended up happier.
I remember that.
They're just obviously, they're like philanthropist style examples. Is there like a policy piece or a legal piece where it's like certain things have to be, don't know.
I mean, it's a question of at what level from a policy piece, because you could do it right at the very senior level, as in like from cabinet office, right from the top of government, and say everybody will do this, which is fine and doable, but often has all sorts of problems with, like, how do you actually measure it? How does it really get done? Stuff does seem to get passed down to the supply chain very often, certainly with social value. So I think there is a need to. I'm going to go with Andrew's thing, which I kind of on board with, which is there has to be a requirement if you're going to win a big government contract, and this could apply to public procurement, but it could apply to any large landowner or large developer that is developing something. It could be house builders, could be commercial landowners, all those sorts of people that build a lot. That they have to write a occupational health, including mental health, strategy, and that has to, they will win or lose their bid based on what they say they do, and then they'll have to provide evidence that they've done it, and they'll have to prove that it's been done, it's being applied to all of the supply chain, the directly and indirectly employed, not just their own employees. So I think there's two big issues there. Is one, who pays, and two, how do you get it through these many tiers? Because that's a real challenge, because if you're the client, you will never have had anything to do with a bricklayer who's laying bricks on your project. You might be, as an individual, you might be like 12, 15 point, degrees of separation, and as a business, like 2 or 3, maybe 4. So that's a challenge. And how do you pay for it is the other one, because it's like, I'm not super comfortable with the contractors having to pay for it, which might be surprising given how I've spoken about like all of this stuff. But it just feels
What do you mean by contractors?
Well, sorry,
Not
the
to say
contract owner, because it could be a consultant. Good
Yeah.
point. It could be a consultant, but usually, or a joint venture. Usually, these large projects are won by large companies, and so say the large companies, the largest companies, the contract holders, let's say, if they have to pay for it, somebody somewhere in that organization is going to be looking at that as just a number.
Yeah.
And that's going to have a lot of sway, in how they operate. All right, we're being asked to spend this number, right? And it's often, I've seen it's been given to really good people, whatever that number is, but you're
exactly the same as innovation.
Yeah, you could say you get innovation, but what are they going to innovate for? They're going to innovate for reduced costs. If you're going to do it that way, you need to be really good at measuring, and I don't think we are. Like, how do you measure that? Offered, is it, because you could say, so here are like several options. You could number of counseling sessions offered. That would be a good measure, right?
Yeah.
But number of counseling hours completed, number of people, suicide rate, those sorts of actual numbers. So if you offer it, it's actually could be really cheap in a sense, if you're an accountant thinking about this, because you can offer 20,000 hours and there's no capacity for people to take that, but you score really highly. So it looks good. But actually the amount of, say, counseling hours completed against the number of people, because having, counseling the hell out of 3 people might be very beneficial for 3 people, but counseling 10,000 people a bit might be better. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. It would need to be looked at in detail. But do you see what I mean? Like how you measure it would really impact whether it's a good idea or not. And so, what if it was just some ring-fenced money for it? It looks like this. I think they should do it for apprenticeships, like some ring-fenced money in the budget for this. It's for this. This is extra. So we're not saying this highway or this new town we want you to make, it's going to cost 25 million quid. It's going to cost 125 million quid. It's going to cost 500 million quid. It's going to cost 5 billion, whatever it is. And somewhere in there, you need to do all of these things, which is how it's currently done. I feel like you need to say, and also on top of the budget is money for this and money for this and money for this. And that's what it's for. Because then you could at least get some level of equal provision, maybe. Don't know.
Okay, so
I've
got 3 minutes.
Brain's all hot now.
I've got 3 minutes left. What's your closing point on this, Henry?
We should get talking. I think that is a start. I think it's I think we do need to. I would really like to see bridges being built between the construction trades and off-site workers, because I think there's a huge disconnect. And yeah, I want us to talk about it more. That's it. That's all I can say. We've got to talk to each other, and we've got to talk about this more. And we should do something. But whatever we do it's got to be measured, because that's the universe we live in. And those measures need to be good, and it needs to be funded. But we can also we can just talk to each other. Go and talk to one another. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, love one another. How about that for a final message?
Right. Thanks very much, everyone. Play some music, Henry.
Can hear your emails going.
Oh, I'm getting absolutely bullshit. Catch you in a bit. I'm going to go and be stressed now. Catch you in a bit.
Bye. Bye, everyone.